Today we're going to talk about Neil Gaiman's The Sandman comics. Mostly I'm going to be talking about Volume 4, the trade paperback, but I'm going to do a really quick touching base on each of the volumes. And I might be looking down because I did write notes. So, Sandman trade paperback, volume number 1. It is issues 1 through 8, written in 1988. The first 7 issues of this collection are More Than Rubies. It's a storyline which introduces Dream. The 8th issue is The Sound of Her Wings. It's a self-contained story that introduces the character Death. The first volume is about a magician who wants to have immortality, and so he's trying to call upon and imprison Death. He messes up and he calls Dream. He doesn't want to then just release Dream because he's worried about the repercussions of calling him, and he's gonna know everything that happened and go tell Death. It's a whole thing. So he imprisons him and he doesn't let him go. Without giving any spoilers, he does escape, and then the rest of the story is about him trying to search to recover his tomes of power, which is a pouch of sand, a helm, and a ruby. This comic I really liked. I feel like it was the foundation of the world, the Sandman world, and Dream's character. It was great all around. Then we've got Volume 2, The Doll's House. This one is issues 8 through 16, written in 1990. In this volume, we read about the love between Dream and Queen Nada. Fearing the consequence of loving an immortal, Nada rejects Dream. In anger, Dream sends Nada to hell, where she remains to present day. Desire and Despair find out there's a new dream vortex, and they scheme against Dream. I almost feel bad leaving it just at that, but this is just a touch base on these trade paperbacks, and that is the gist of this comic. I personally did not love this one. I found it to be a slower read, but a lot of that has to do with that's the gist of what happens, but the dream vortex, there's a whole bunch of new characters that are introduced to prolong the plot, and this is the first time you kind of get a glimpse of the horror aspect of this dark fantasy mythology of a comic. It's not something so bad of a touch of horror and gore in the comic that you won't want to read it, because someone like me, I don't like any horror or gore. There's a purpose to it for the story, so it's fine. But it did make the reading of this one a little bit harder and a little bit slower. So, I don't know, you'd have to read it and form your own opinion on this one, but this one I just found okay-ish. Then we've got volume number 3. Sandman volume number 3 is comics 17 through 20, Dream Country. It was written in 1990. This volume is 4 independent stories. The first one contains a reference to Dream's son. I guess that plays an important role later in the series. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm actually on volume 4 of this comic. The second one is A Dream of a Thousand Cats. I loved that story. The third one is A Midsummer Night's Dream, where Dream partners up with William Shakespeare. And last is a story about Facade, which is a neglected character in the DC universe who retires as a superhero and basically just stays in her apartment all the time, and she really hates her appearance, and it really felt out of place. There are some people online who argue that these aren't independent stories and they're gonna come into play and it's all gonna tie together. I don't know how. I really did feel like these were independent stories. This one also wasn't my favorite of the trade paperbacks, but that's because I want as much as I can of the Endlesses. I want to know more about the Endlesses: dream, desire, despair, death. Like, I want more of that. And this was independent stories. There was the story with Dream meeting up with Shakespeare. I really liked the Thousand Cats story, but this one, again, it was just okay. Then we've got Volume 4. The volume I want to talk about today. Season of the Mist. It was written between 1990 and 1991. It's comics 21 to 28. Begins with the Endless family meeting. So cool. It's our first time getting a glance at who the Endless are. At the meeting, Desire taunts Dream at his intolerance, treating of his former love, Nada, and the fact that he sent her to hell and that she's still there. Dream gets even more agitated because Death, who is the sibling he's closest to, agrees that Dream overreacted by sending his girlfriend to hell. This makes it that Dream goes down to hell to try to save her. In that process, she's already been released because to get back at Dream for things that happened in Volume 1 when Lucifer went to retrieve one of his tomes of power that was in hell. Lucifer abandons hell, just like the show. He abandons hell, and but he leaves the keys to Dream and is like, hey, this is your problem now. Screw it. Cut off my wings. I'm done. And that's just like a mess, but it's great. This comic was so good. Okay. So that happens, and so many people from all different realms find out that Dream has the keys to hell now. So all these people come to Dream, and they're trying to everything from blackmail to bribe, plead, beg, everything, trying to get the keys to hell. There's these two angels, Duma, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, D-U-M-A, and Remley, that are set to observe the negotiations. But in the end, they're the ones that get the keys to hell. Dream ends up... It all makes sense. They end up with the keys. Oh, it's twisted. It's so twisted. There is this other story that's going on in this comic that I didn't like. So I loved all that, but then there was this weird in which the dead return story. It was issue number 25. That's like this English boarding school, but it was like this kid with a ghost, and these ghosts were like beating up on this kid. But the purpose of that story was to show the consequences of hell being closed and the souls being released. So it all did make sense, but it was like, ugh. This comic also was like very much a touch of the horror and gore, but it wasn't a slow read. This one I was able to read even without liking a horror and gore aspect. This one I was able to read relatively quickly because, I mean, the story was strong enough to like really go through. It was such a great story. The ending, there was two different two simultaneous endings. Dream discovers that Loki avoids his punishment and tries to negotiate that Dream set him free. And also Lucifer is shown without his wings on a beach. And those two angels that we talked about earlier that are in hell ruling it make themselves at home in hell. And try to like basically reform hell, but it's still hell. But you know, it's kind of like one of those situations where someone thinks that they're doing something that's like so good, but they're doing like a lot of the same of what always was hell. So it was overall like a terrific comic. I really enjoyed it. You've got such a mixed bag of things going on here, but I'd highly recommend all of the Sandman comics.